We are on what page is this in the book? It's the analytics stack ladder. It doesn't have a page on it, but it's towards the back of the book. With that, I'm going to welcome our special guest, Jeremy from OpenStore. Please give Jeremy a round of applause. Good to meet you. Yeah. All right, so while I stumble over myself, Jeremy, quick intro for everybody, then we'll jump into our second ladder of the day.
Awesome, thanks for the intro. So I helped co-found OpenStore, and we are largely an e-commerce merchant, but we have a different side to the business as well, where we actually acquire merchants. So we do three different things. We buy businesses. We also will run businesses. We have a program called Drive that lets us run your business for a year, and we pay you for that the entire time. Then we have a third program that we just started up called Boost, where it's kind of like a mini Drive, where we run and operate merchants' businesses for about a 10-week period with the potential for an acquisition offer at the end of that. So that's a lot of what we do. And then on the other side, we actually have to operate and run those merchants. So we've picked up a bunch of learnings in the time that we've been alive on how to do that effectively and at scale across all the different merchants that we operate.
Awesome. A ton of knowledge. So John has been up here already once. Jerica, quick intro.
Hey guys, I'm Jerica. I'm the product manager at Elevar. So doing all the things in GTM, server-side tracking, and everything in between.
So John, Darren, and I, we had the pleasure of going down to OpenStore about a year and a half ago. And I think you're underselling like the sophistication that you guys operate under. How many brands in total do you have now?
So we're about 50-ish brands at this point.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, like wild, like how deep you're getting into analytics, automation. We talk data stacks. I think even when we talk about it at Elevar, the level that you guys are moving to, and even a year and a half ago was pretty wild. I know John, you walked away, your eyes were exploding a little bit of like, wow, these guys are some really smart talent down there.
Yeah, you guys use hedge fund analysts. There's hedge fund analysts inside the company. It's basically like a very different approach from what we typically see. So I was shocked when I saw that, and I thought one of the most interesting parts of the business is that you guys bring, like you said, every time I say the number of brands in the stable, it's more, but you bring all those brands together, and you can't really do it in one GA4 property, right? You have a very unique way of bringing all the data together. So I thought maybe we would start by talking about how OpenStore thinks about aggregating all that data. Like, what's the approach?
And maybe also a little bit of the why even. So look, going back to the hedge fund piece, we tried to just find a bunch of smart people and hire them. That's generally been my MO in life. And you get to work with smart people, you get excited by smart people, and the energy just builds on itself. A bunch of smart people operating e-commerce businesses are generally asking the question, how do we do better constantly? And as I'm sure many people have experienced, GA4 is just not a great way to answer that question. It's hard to use. It doesn't give you the analytics that you want. It's really hard to customize without a lot of effort being put into it. So we immediately moved over to, okay, what other things can we build to make this possible? And that's how we ended up with the stack that we ended up with, which is itself complex. So I can touch on pieces of it without breaking down the full thing. But we're also having to pull in the data as we want to give people prices, just so we can give them a really fast price. So we actually, again, have kind of two sides of the house here. We're able to do this short, fast. How do we just use it to price a merchant and give them the best price, and then not really do anything else with it? And then how do we also operate our own stores? And those are two very different data analytics stacks. The first one we had to get good at really fast because merchants wanted a really high degree of transparency on what they were passing over to us and what we would actually do with the data. So we were trying to make sure that we followed through on that promise. And then on the just operating these merchants side, honestly, our first stack, we just moved off of GA4 and started using a combination of Segment, Fivetran, and Amplitude. And then once we got past that, we started coming to you guys. You guys helped a lot with that top level data ingestion piece. And then beneath that, it was just a bunch of awesome, crazy engineering work to output it in a form where, honestly, if there's one piece of advice I give to people when they're asking, how do I get closer to data? how do I make better decisions? It's pick up SQL. Learn SQL. If you know SQL, the data is in your hands. You can do literally whatever you want with it. And it's just about working with partners who are able to get the right data to you.
Heard that a few times today, picking up SQL as a skill set. Before we get into a little bit more of what you guys are doing and the how, I thought it'd be helpful. So it wasn't a ladder, it was our tracking knowledge inventory. I thought it'd be good just for everyone, we'll take a step back and just do your own analysis. Where are you 1 to 5? 1 as in, a cookie is what you're hoping to get in about 30 minutes, 45 minutes downstairs during happy hour, to 5, all the ins and outs of first versus third-party cookies, server side versus client side. So just do like a quick inventory. Where do you think you are? We'll talk through a little bit of this and then come back to some, future of tracking where you guys see it, potentially where, where we might be 3 years from now. So 20 seconds, where does everyone feel? And then John and Jerica, I'm going to let you jump in with giving a quick definition on cookies in a sec. All right, that was 10. We don't need 20 seconds. All right, so cookies, first versus third-party cookies. 5th grade level, what is it? What does that mean?
So cookies are like a database in the browser, is how I usually say it. It's basically a place where you store information. So if you come in off of a Facebook ad click, let's say, you'll have a parameter in the URL that needs to be saved and sent off to Facebook to make sure that the ad's tracked. That information needs to be saved somewhere before it's sent, and typically it's sent or it's stored in a cookie.
It's a barcode, right?
It's a barcode. Yeah.
So third-party, what's the difference between first and third?
So
because we hear, by the way, the context is if you hear any of the fear-mongering that might exist, like cookies are dying, ads are going to be dead, you can't track anything. Part of this is doing a reset on, no, that's not actually the truth. So first.
So third-party cookies is where the war is. But first-party cookies, I mean, there's still issues. They're starting to expire faster and faster. But third-party cookies are the cookies that enabled companies to follow you around and track you on the web. First-party cookies don't have that ability. Is my mic okay?
Yeah, good. Just a little louder.
The first-party cookie can only be set by the site itself.
Jerica, anything to add?
Yeah, I would just add that the third-party cookies have a little bit more control of the data. And John, you put it before that I really loved. It's really where an ad vendor is aware of what you're doing on 2 different websites. That's what third-party cookies allow you to do, which is a little kind of crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, you go to OG.com, and then you go to Weather Channel, and you see a bunch of ads for OG. Weatherchannel.com. That's third-party. That's what third-party cookies are enabling.
But just to add to first-party cookies, we wouldn't be able to function without those. Without a first-party cookie, it would be like you walk into a store, you say hello to the store attendant, and then you walk out the door and come back in, and they have no idea who you are. You can't run a store that way. And that's where there's, to your point, that's not where the battlefield is right now at all. It's purely on these third-party cookies that let someone else be in that store and recognize you, and then also recognize you in a different store.
Yeah. What about in data storage? Just thinking about business intelligence, is there value to storing cookies, leveraging that? We were talking about data blending, and is there any?
Yeah, it seems like it. I mean, on the surface, it seems like it for sure, because if you have these cookies for a longer period of time, you're able to connect over a longer period of time. If the cookie expires after a day, there's a major problem, because if somebody comes in off of a TikTok ad and then the cookie's saved and they make a purchase tomorrow, in the worst case scenario, that purchase may never be attributed to TikTok. So if you can extend it, of course, there's going to be benefits. However, for example, with TikTok, if we send them an email address.
TikTok's here, by the way.
Yeah, TikTok's here, by the way. If we send TikTok an email address, they can do pretty much what they can do with only the click ID. So it's debatable, and these are arguments that we have with our VP of Technology, Thomas, every Friday. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah. All right, the next one down, so server side versus client side. Again, we've been beating the drum of server side for such a long time. You want to take this quick explanation, or you want to phone a friend?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one. So server side versus client side. Client side means it's just happening in the browser on the person's laptop, which means you're operating within the walled environment provided to you by the browser versus, sorry, did I say server side for that? I'm talking about client side. That client side is happening on the client in the browser inside that walled garden, whereas server side is happening on your server. So it's your own, so to speak, garden that you get to control, which means there are very few limitations placed on it. So if you can get data over to server side, it's just a lot more reliable. On top of that, when it's client side, it's really controlled by the user behavior. So if this is something that takes a couple of seconds to run to track data, if the user navigates away, the browser is going to cut off whatever you're doing. And so you might never even get that data. So there's also a move just to server side so that you can make sure that data is actually tracked. It's not getting blocked by blockers of scripts on the client side, and things that might otherwise get canceled and not sent over to you really do get sent over.
So Ash and Ron that they just mentioned, they've acquired a couple brands, I think, on top of Obvi. So they have a few brands, and we're obviously, you guys are doing this at major scale, but we see more brands doing this, whether it's just holding small holdcos. But are there any, for Ash and Ron, like what advice would you give them if they have 3 distinct companies? Like what could they do if they have a hold of their data where it's living in their data warehouse? Are there any things that they could do across those brands?
Lots. I mean, for one, you're just going to have better data, period. But if you're able to move it all server side, you can actually start putting it in one place. So you can start drawing lessons from all 3 of those brands as opposed to just one brand at a time. I'm sure everyone here who runs A/B tests understands the pain of just waiting for data to build up to a point where it's actually useful. And you can start doing that faster if you start running tests across wider surfaces and then are able to aggregate them in the back end on through basically server-side tracking that does the aggregation for you. Just also generally, any improvement you make is going to be able to be applied to all 3 of those, which is our entire MO as we've scaled out across a bunch of different brands.
Yeah. John and Jerica, what about identity resolution? So we've talked a lot today about session IDs, client IDs. So with Faye and John this morning, we're talking about how to stitch purchase back to a page view or add to cart from maybe a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Explain a little bit about what this is.
I would say user identity resolution is the solution to the browser restrictions with cookies. So we just talked about how cookies are a barcode. They're like a unique ID for that shopper on the website. And they tell TikTok, hey, this person adding to cart, her name's Jerica. And that's how it knows. But with browser restrictions, we're playing in Safari's rules. We have to abide by their rules. That cookie, if we lose that, then TikTok doesn't know that that person is Jerica. So how can we get around this? We send TikTok the next best thing, the thing that the cookie is trying to tell TikTok. It's who is the person. So how do we send TikTok, maybe not that cookie ID, but can we tell them the first name and last name? Can we tell them the email address, the phone number? If we give that core user identifying information to TikTok, it doesn't matter if the label's there or not. TikTok knows who that person is, and that's what matters.
Yeah, and there's another easy reference here. If you go to Facebook or Meta's docs, and they have their ranking of what's the most important user matching parameters. So one of the big concerns with iOS 17 was link tracking protection, which is removing FB click ID and G click ID. Let's just assume that you can no longer in Safari track, Facebook is no longer getting a Facebook click ID, which is a query parameter, which actually sets another FBC cookie, which then you'd want to send that to Facebook to help Facebook match activity on the site to views or clicks of an ad. If that's gone, in Facebook's top 10, it's email, phone number, name, address, et cetera. That's what they have listed in their docs that they're looking for to help them match, again, activity from your site to activity within their platforms. So that's where the user identity resolution, yes, it touches cookies and users logged in, stitching across sessions, et cetera. It is becoming really a critical piece of, I think, tracking today, and it likely will continue as the walled gardens continue. All right, data warehousing. Who wants to take this one? I feel like there's someone that should take this, and we're all looking at it.
Yeah, I'm happy to tackle this one. Honestly, we went for the heavy-duty solution early on, so we immediately signed up for Snowflake. Snowflake has been great for us. It's all about ways of accessing Snowflake. So got a couple other different analytics platforms just integrated directly with that. So honestly, between dumping everything you can imagine in Snowflake and then plugging it into, we use Mode Analytics a lot. Has been really, really good to us and worked out really well. But the point of data warehousing is historically you used to import data into a couple different essentially warehouses or databases, and it would be a lot of trouble to stitch them together. You'd have to build your own data pipelines in order to connect different data sources together. We've really gone heavily into solutions like Snowflake that allow you just to put it all in one place and figure out how you want to connect it together later on your own.
Yeah. What is Snowflake? Some people might be wondering what is Snowflake?
Snowflake is a data warehouse. So that is all they do. They store data and they make it easy to query it. And they're very, very good at what they do. They are expensive. They're definitely not the solution for everyone. For us, they were the solution because we knew we wanted to be really close to the data and able to query it ourselves. Again, back to if you can pick up SQL, it's a great place to go. Otherwise, it's probably a little bit of a heavyweight solution, but has given us a ton of flexibility over time.
Yeah. John, anything to add?
Actually, a question. If you guys had one brand of the same size as all the brands put together, would you be as into this crazy data stack as you are?
Absolutely. Would it look slightly different? Also, absolutely. But I think we would have just moved further and faster. A lot of what we do is actually trying to get to that point. I would love to be at that point. It would make everything so simple.
Just in case I didn't come through the speaker, question, sorry, not you, just if all the open store brands, if it was just one brand, won't get on revenue size or anything, but just instead of having the 50, 60 brands, it's just one, would you guys have or use the same data stack or thought process or philosophy? And that was your answer to that, correct?
Yeah, I think the answer depends on how close you feel comfortable getting to the data. So if you're going to be in the weeds, getting technical with it, it pays to have something like Snowflake that really gives you that flexibility. If you don't need that, you shouldn't be paying for it. And just, I think, be upfront about that and be upfront about what you're going to need over the next couple of years. I think one of the other reasons we put it all in Snowflake, we knew it was going to be best in class. There are a couple other ones out there like that as well. So Databricks is a common one. And so we knew that we'd want that over time, even if we didn't need it day one, day two. And data is really hard and annoying and expensive to migrate out of one warehouse over to another. And so I think picking that is a critical decision, but one that should be made based on where you see yourself going if you're successful over the next couple of years.
Yeah. So last one here, machine learning and AI. I'm going to shift the question on this one a little bit. What would if someone circled a 5, they're a 5 and they're tracking inventory knowledge or even their implementation? Does anyone have any opinions on what would make someone a 5? What are they doing today that, yes, you are a 5 in the machine learning and actually putting AI to use outside of copy, et cetera?
I'm going to let you guys go first, then I'll give you an answer.
Not an area of expertise for me. You take it if you...
I have one thought. It's not truly AI, but it is definitely automation. So we talked a lot about how in GA4, there is a framework and a context which you need to understand. And sometimes the answer is outside of that framework. So John, you gave that great example on a previous panel where you talked about how traffic comes to your website anonymous. You don't know who the person is, but you need to start building a user profile, a user ID. When that order happens, we suddenly have this beautiful Shopify customer ID, which is the same across any device. It's the same for it's unique to that email address. Versus that anonymous data, how do you continuously connect that? And you had shared how, I think it was with Source Medium, they can actually backfill the historical data for that user to that unique, now known for sure customer ID. So while they might have 2 different user IDs because they have 2 different devices, Source Medium allowed you to backfill that into one unique session and one unique user. That is highly powerful. I talked with a merchant before who was piping all their data into some sort of data warehouse. I don't know if it was Snowflake or not, but that was how they would power their email marketing. They would then pump that data and use that cleaner, nicer cross-device data to then target their emails or target their SMSs. And starting at that foundation, I thought that was powerful.
The dynamic segmentation, which I don't know if Jimmy's going to get into any of that in a minute with SendLane, but yeah, John, did you have any thoughts, or Jeremy?
From the perspective of machine learning and AI, no. But I do have a big question for you that I really wanted to get to about just you have so many brands in the stable. What do you see when you take over a brand that's often not being done that should be being done? And I have a follow-up for that one too.
Okay, amazing. I'm going to try and tackle all of these things at once. So first, on kind of, I promise this feeds into that. The machine learning and AI side specifically, I think as it relates to just understanding your customer, I think dynamic segment creation is a massive one. So diving into that a little bit, it's just how do you actually use the small individual pieces of information that you have, both pre-purchase and post-purchase, like when it's still anonymized and post de-anonymization, to actually infer more information about them. That's all it is at the end of the day. So some of the like most basic stuff you can be doing there is trying to extract a gender demographic from a name so that you can figure out a little bit more about how you might potentially target a customer in the future. And then you can just take that and expand it and expand it and expand it and expand it as a concept. I think honestly, one of the reasons we started Open Store was not because we thought that we would be better at running these individual merchants that we're buying than the person who starts it. Because usually individual merchant is really passionate about what they're doing. They know it better than almost anyone else. So they're going to be absolute masters of what they are selling. So what we have to be masters at is everything else. We have to be really good at building out that machine learning, AI, data stack behind it so that we can make better decisions without having that firsthand knowledge, at least at first. And again, we want to build that up over time of these brands that we're working with. And so that's been a massive area of focus for us. How do we get more from what data you get? And like back to just anonymization in general, there are fewer and fewer crumbs of information that you have that you're able to stick together. And so you're both trying to extract as much from those and then build up, and this is kind of where everything is going, build up rough contours of customers. You want these segments. And so Google is moving that direction with topics, and that's going to be a big, big, big area over the next couple of years. And then for us as well, it's about, okay, we don't really know, I guess as an example, we don't really know exactly what their age is. We know what age band they're in, and then we can make a like statistical inference about that to try and get some source of truth over time that we're going to be able to update as we get better and better, and then test out with that customer and actually see if it works. So pulling that back to what do I see merchants not doing essentially that they should be doing early on? I think it is a topic for all of this. If you can learn one thing, it's invest in your data stack. If you want to make better decisions, find a way to figure out if you're doing better and apply that framework to anything you're doing. And if you don't know the answer, go find someone else who does. I think these conferences are actually amazing for meeting experts or people who are not experts, but have like built up their own level of knowledge in a domain, but are otherwise very similar to you. Hit them up at the cocktail hour and just chat with them about what their level of knowledge is, write down their phone number. And if you ever are trying to figure out how to understand whether you can be better at something, just reach out to those contacts. I think there's so much knowledge that is fragmented out in the ecosystem right now. Which again, part of why we started Open Store, we thought we could just pull that all together into one place and do a really, really good job. So honestly, as a result of that, I think we frequently talk with merchants who are coming to us almost too late. And so they're coming in, their brand has been declining now for a year and a half, and they just haven't been proactive about reaching out to others or even reaching out to us and trying to see, do we have advice? Do we want to work with them? What would they even be worth at that point? And so they're doing it so late that they don't really have as many options anymore. And we still oftentimes work with those merchants, but I think I'd love to see those merchants just be a little bit more proactive, reaching out to others, reaching out to us, really just to get a better understanding of their options. And then at the same time, really investing in their data stacks and understanding that. And if you have to take like 2 weeks off just to do that and let your store run itself, that's going to be an investment that really pays off down the line.
Very good. Cool.
I want to double tap on the year and a half example. So they've been declining for a year and a half. Let's say there's somebody in this room that is them. If you're in this room, that's not you, but let's just pretend that someone might be there or watching. What could they do now? So what are their options to fix, pivot, tweak, tune, because obviously the macroeconomic conditions that's affecting people on a wide scale, breadth and depth. But what are things that they can do now?
I mean, I think the challenge is there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah.
There's no magic bullet that I can pitch on this. I think unfortunately, I wish there were. That would be great. If I could tell you, go do X, you're going to be successful and make $1 million. I totally would. I would love to. But I think in general, it is a better understanding of what's not working and why, and just chasing down those threads to figure out how you can fix it. But I think most people in the room are already doing a lot of pieces of that.
Yeah. And you're the couple of new programs. So you went through the total acquisition side of things, but then you have new programs that you're coming in as a partner to be that operations arm, the data arm, the marketing arm, which I'm sure to many that's enticing. It's like, I don't have to worry about any of that. It's great. I can just hand it off to you guys. Maybe talk a little about how that works and some of the wins that you've seen with brands that they weren't ready to sell yet, but they wanted some help scaling, but didn't want to go through potentially the operation, hiring, training, et cetera.
Yeah, totally. I think it's a scary thing to sell away your brand that you've been building for a long time. It's a very, you make that decision, you can't go back exactly. Yeah. So this was our attempt to fix that. So just for context, we have this program I mentioned at the start. It's called Drive, where we will take on and run brands for a merchant for a year, and we essentially pay them what we are predicting they would be making over that year if nothing else changed in their business. And obviously, we go through that number with them. It's an offer. People don't have to accept it. So it's useful just to come and get it at any point. And then by working with them through that year, we get a better understanding of their business and how well we could run it. Meanwhile, it's giving them an opportunity to kind of step back, see what we would do with it, and also just focus time elsewhere.
But they're plugging into a lot of the sophistication that you've talked through. They're plugging into that system, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know there are a couple other questions. Maybe John, anything else on? So I think we're done with the tracking inventory, the machine learning, AI, the result. Hopefully everyone's 25. But anything else future of tracking that maybe we should touch on, because we are a tracking company after all, and you guys are a big data company ultimately. What's the future look like?
Yeah, we talked about headwinds in the tracking world, and I don't know, Jerica, if you want to talk a little bit about it.
I'm always thinking, I'm part of these conversations so early on. I'm thinking like years out about what tracking is going to look like. And ultimately, I think my little tidbit of what I think it's going to look like in the future is I think tracking is eventually going to become so tightly intertwined with the loading of the website. I think the future of tracking, we're having this like pivot, this push and pull between more and more privacy restrictions. When I upgraded to iOS 17, Safari started promoting to me that, hey, we blocked 17 trackers in the last 7 days. Like, privacy is becoming a value proposition for browsers. So the future is, how do we make tracking so intertwined with the loading of your website that you cannot load the website without it being tracked?
We looked at the impact of iOS 17 over the last week or so. And we saw in our research, which was small, about 15% of people in Safari are in private browsing mode as of today. It's lower in Chrome. It's like 10%. At least that's what I've seen. So 15% of people basically can't accept those URL parameters that we were talking about earlier. They just won't get through. So in some circumstances, like with TikTok and Facebook and Snapchat, if they have your email before you click, then you can link it all up with an email. But for other channels, like an affiliate channel, where they don't have your email, if users are in Safari private browsing mode, the credit will never be assigned, essentially. So I think there's a bunch of stuff around that we're going to be working on. And then the other piece is, integrating fingerprinting into your user ID stuff. And Elevar doesn't do that directly. We make it really easy to plug a fingerprint system in and provide your own user ID. But this is getting more into what Jeremy was saying with probabilistic tracking instead of deterministic. So you make a guess. You roughly know, you're 95% sure that person who clicked on an ad made the purchase, but you don't know for sure like you would with the Click ID. Yeah. So yeah, I think those are like the hot areas, at least right now.
Yeah.
I think more and more things are going to have to move to first party. So it's going to be about how much can you gather from with your own interactions with the customer, and less about relying on platforms like Facebook, which then also leads down this whole other direction of, okay, you have only a fuzzy image of what your customers look like. Well, you need to find ways to get closer to that fuzzy image. So I think influencers are a big one that we've invested in as well. I know that last panel talked a lot about that, because you can find influencers that are interested in your products. And then if they're interested in your products, hopefully their customers or their followers are interested in those same products. And that's a way to kind of meet customers halfway in the middle without having to rely on, really Facebook tracking is like the biggest thing that's going to get hit here at the end of the day. Like the age of just relying on Facebook, it's going to come to an end, or at least it's going to decrease in size and scale.
Well, this is awesome. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming up and sharing your wisdom. Everyone, let's give Jeremy a round of applause. And Jerica, John.
Also, I want to thank my awesome team that's standing over there in the fireplace. If you have any questions about us, feel free to go chat with them at some point. They've made a lot of this possible.
Thanks, guys.